Hey everyone, Nubkeks here. Welcome to my tier list for the Cassia Patch in the 2017 Season 1 season for Hero League here in Heroes of the Storm. We're going to dive right into this. There should be timestamps in the description if you want to hop to any particular role. As you may notice, unfortunately, the program I was using last time to make this look pretty and a bit slicker is not cooperating with me this week, and I wanted to make sure to get this out as quickly as possible. So going to be going back to the old Photoshop format for this one, but be back with the proper program next time. So just bear with the old looking tier list that we have here. And yeah, as always, of course, you know, this tier list is more applicable to higher levels of play. As you go down to the lower leagues, it's less applicable, and also, you know, less important to have a tier list, but certainly for pushing things, for getting more serious, and for understanding how the meta really works at better levels of play in Hero League. This should be a good guide for you. So without any further ado, let's dive in here to the Warriors. Warriors are in an interesting spot at the moment. I think the ETC nerf is one of the huge changes in this patch. I've put him down all the way into the underpowered tier. Unfortunately for ETC, he just does not seem to be doing well at all. And this actually makes a massive change to the meta. This is probably one of the biggest changes, as he has been a dominant warrior for so long. Often a very viable, you know, pick in the first rotation or two. One of the most common, if not the most common, second ban phase ban. So yeah, ETC being kind of kicked out is an absolutely massive change, and opens up a lot of other picks to kind of rising up through the ranks. Of course, as well, needless to say, Arthas is the #1 OP warrior in my opinion. He is the main tank of the day at the moment. So punishing to melee heroes. You know, tons of survivability, lots of CC. I think Arthas is really one to watch out for. I think a Nubkeks as well is also insanely strong, and something of a somewhat underrated hero, I would say. But a Nubkeks, you know, likewise, he's very, very tanky against spell damage dealers. He brings a lot of CC in his base kit. Surprising amount of survivability as well. I feel like a Nubkeks is one of the most sort of underrated heroes at the moment, but he's a serious pick that's worth considering. Then the other OP hero for me has to be Sonya. Sonya dominates a lot of solo lanes, which is a very valuable thing. You know, Ragnaros also been nerfed, not as impactful anymore. I think Sonya is like probably the #1 solo laner at the moment. She's very strong. Another very underrated hero. I think Leap is well worth considering too as a talent. I'll have a video, by the way, on Sonya. I haven't done one in a while. I have one up on her specifically in the next week, so you can look forward to that. I have a bit of insight into how to play her. And yeah, I think she's really, really good. Then we got the strong heroes. I mean, Zarya, that's her second supporty type warrior, kind of fits in the range damage dealers, especially with Tassadar being nerfed. Zarya has like got a really cool spot as this like sort of ultimate shielding hero. Dehaka brings global presence and a great solo lane. Diablo, very strong on like ganky maps with lots of lanes to soak as well, like Tomb of Spider Queen, Dragonshire, really good on those. Artanis, I think, is also actually a decent enough spot in this current patch. I think he's actually doing okay. Again, he can sit in the solo lane, he's not too bad. He's a good front line, and then Suppression Pulse, always super useful. Plus the God Swaps, as always. Got Varian, actually, and I think Tank Varian is in a decent enough spot at the moment as well. You know, I think he's kind of bottom of tier 1, but you know, he's still a solid tank, especially, you know, again, bear in mind that some of these tank placements are very much affected by the fact that ETC has been moved down, so that opens up some of these lesser tier tanks before to kind of just fit in a bit better now that that spot is opened up very much so. Then we've got Muradin. Always, you know, a strong, versatile tank here at the bottom of tier 1. In tier 2, we've got Leoric, Johanna, Tyrael, Rexar, Chen, and Stitches. I love Leoric. I think Leoric is great. Again, another good, strong solo lane hero. Maps like Tomb of the Spider Queen. Johanna is a decent main tank. She's not as good in higher levels. I feel like there's typically better options depending on the map, but she's always like a decent, solid choice, especially if you want something that can lock down basic attackers, and kind of your other options have been removed, like Arthas is already gone, that sort of thing. Johanna can be a good solid choice for a very dependable frontliner. We've got Tyrael there as well. Definitely fallen off a good bit. I don't think he fits that well at the moment, but we'll see. I think you could see a resurgence of Tyrael very much in the future in a different patch. We've got Rexxar, he's good, solid hero as well. Again, good at solo laning. So on maps where you need to just win the solo lane, Rexxar can be a good choice in many matchups. Chen, similar spot, but not that good in a lot of the current matchups, but he's there. Again, we might see more Chen in the future. I don't think at the moment. And then you got Stitches, who's okay. I feel like Artanis swaps are a bit better than the Stitches hook, but Stitches hook, nice little gimmick, can work sometimes. And finally, we got ETC and Cho. I feel like ETC really got nerfed a bit too much. I expect to see some buffs in the next balance patch, so he will move up after that one. So perhaps later in sort of the Cassia cycle, before we get to the next hero. Very possible that ETC will move back up. I'm expecting him to be improved a little bit, but right now he's in a rough spot, so I wouldn't really be, unfortunately, looking at playing him. And then Cho'Gall, I think, just really suffering Hero League due to the fact that you're not on voice comms. You don't have communication with your other partner. I think that is a really, really big problem. So yeah, there you go. Let's hop over to the supports now, and let's take a look at them. So the supports thing has changed up a little bit. I still think Lucio is probably the best one overall. With a lot of, he combos very well with a lot of heroes and counters a lot very well too. The sound barrier, I think it's a very big deal. Plus the amount, just the raw amount of AoE healing he does late game is a huge deal as well. In tier 1 then, I think these three supports are really good. Really, really good. We've got Malf, Rehgar, and Kharazim. I think those three guys are super impactful and super strong. So yeah, definitely watch out for those three. I'm a big fan of each one of those. In tier 2 then, we've got a few interesting heroes. We've got Oriel, Lieutenant Morales, Tyrande, Brightwing, and Tassadar. Now Tassadar has been nerfed down a lot. He used to be like super OP. I think now he's just okay. He's just okay. Obviously you can still do Vala task combos, Tracer task combos. They can be really nice, but nowhere near as dominant as it was before because of the nerfs to him and his shielding in particular. And then we got Uther and Lily. Kind of, I think that the weaker heroes, they don't really stand out too much. Which I'd say the big changes at the moment, you know, the Malf nerfs, obviously they've settled down a while, and I think it leaves Malf as being very strong, but not as OP as he was before, but still very strong. And I think, you know, the Malf nerfs, and they also toned down Lucio as well. It does open up these other healers to being actually pretty decent. So, you know, like Malf, Rehgar, a good aggressive support with great wave clear, great objective clear, great damage, and Ancestral is fantastic. Kharazim, again, you know, he brings good healing, mobility, all that sort of stuff, good aggression too. I think one of the interesting things is Oriel, I feel like, has moved up a little bit too. You know, with the kind of focus on Arthas and some of these other heroes that are not that dive focused. You know, Arthas kind of mitigates a lot of dive, he counters a lot of dive heroes. And then he's also not divey himself. So the dive meta, it can be countered quite a lot in the drafts. And that certainly opens up Oriel quite a bit more. Because I feel like she suffers quite a lot going up against dive. But she's very, very happy in these more like, rawr, big tanky team versus big tanky team. We're just going to fight each other one-on-one with a ranged hero. Just blasting spells at each other, abilities. Oriel does really well in there. She's like, okay, I generate loads of energy, heal up everyone. It's fantastic. So yeah, I think she's doing a bit better in this patch as opposed to what she was before. But I mean, like Brightwing, Brightwing brings globals. Tyrande fits in as a nice second support if you're looking for kill pressure. Morales obviously wins lanes if you don't have anything to counter her. Again, fits somewhat in with the anti-dive meta and stuff like that. So yeah, I think support's overall in a pretty good spot. A lot of them are pretty viable, and you can definitely choose some of the others. Again, you typically be looking at tier S or the tier 1 supports, but you can definitely mix in those tier 2 for particular niches and stuff like that, and generally not going to tier 3. But yeah, I think the supports are in a pretty reasonable spot overall in terms of balance. There's lots of good options there. All right, let's hop over to melee assassins. All right, then in tier S, so a bit of a mix up here for melee assassins, I think for sure. You know, Ragnaros has fallen down, finally been nerfed and been reined in a good bit. But yeah, so Zeratul, I think still a high level of play, is very OP. I think Zeratul is still incredibly strong, but he's a very difficult hero. So, you know, do bear that in mind when you're looking at this tier list. It's for high levels of play. He's just like VP. It's just such a huge team fight impact heroic. And then just the massive amount of burst damage he brings and the pressure he brings against, you know, squish your backline heroes like Lunara and Vala really have a tough time against Zeratul. He's just a big pain in the ass. So that's what he does very, very well. Tier 1 then we've got Kerrigan, Illidan, Rag, and then Valeera actually. So yeah, I think Kerrigan still on certain maps very, very strong, brings a lot of kill pressure, very strong early game, good damage, and set up for getting kills, which is very impactful, of course. I think Illidan is actually in a great spot at the moment. Just the mobility, backline dive, all that kind of stuff. I'm then great at doing objectives and can even do some cool laning tricks as well if you're a good Illidan, pushing down towers very aggressively early on. I think he's in a great spot as well. Ragnaros he's definitely not as good as he was before. He kind of struggles a lot more in the lanes. He's just kind of nerfs just tone him down. I think he's still good, he's still strong, but nowhere near the level of OP that he was before. And then Valeera, again, sort of like Zeratul, she's just very punishing to the quite squishy backlines that we tend to have. Just the kill pressure she brings against those is pretty immense. I think she's an interesting hero, again, kind of difficult to play. You're going to see a lot of fail Valeeras, but then like a good Valeera can have a huge impact. So yeah, Valeera in Hero League in particular, very, very good. Tier 2 then, Butcher, Alarak, Thrall, and Varian. I think all of these heroes are actually pretty solid, but they are quite niche. So for example, with Alarak and Thrall, you're picking heroes to basically win the solo lane. That's kind of what they do. So that's why they're only okay. It's like they win the solo lane, then they're not as... I feel like they don't bring as much to the rest of the game typically as other heroes would, like like a Sonya or maybe Artanis or something like that. But they're still good solid heroes. Alarak can win a lot of solo lanes in particular, so can Thrall. I think they're worth considering from that perspective. The common solo lanes, work out the combinations and the counters, and these guys fit in very well there. Butcher, of course, he just crazy damage output. I think he's very strong. Obviously, with the Arthas meta, it's an issue because Arthas works so well against him. But yeah, I think the Butcher remains, of course, one of the most underrated heroes. I think people kind of copped on recently. They're going like, wow, hang on. Like, if you look at the statistics, the Butcher is winning loads of games, but everyone considers him to be terrible. I think he's okay. I think he gets countered quite easily in terms of the drafting. He can be difficult to squeeze in. But when you do squeeze him in, he can be extremely effective. Just the amount of attention that he draws and kill pressure that he creates. It's just you have to focus so much on fighting the Butcher. It opens up the rest of the team to kind of be much more free in terms of what they're doing. So, yeah, I think he's actually a very good hero. You'll have noticed in some of the videos recently that you'll see like a lot of the pro players like Wubby and Blade, stuff like that, busting him out. And I think he's a good, solid hero. Definitely underrated. Even still, even after him being high win rate for ages, still very much underrated. Then we have Varian. Yeah, he's okay. I think Colossal Smash Varian is really interesting. I like it a lot, or Colossus Smash, whichever one it's called. I forget. But yeah, I quite like that. I think it's a pain to play against. Can be quite good against some of these beefier frontline heroes that vulnerability can be quite surprising to play against, plus the burst damage. I think he's got an interesting spot against like Diablo or Arthas, for example. So yeah, I actually quite like Varian. Twin Blades, certain niches maybe, but not really. But yeah, and then we've got Samuro, who's underpowered. I just don't think Samuro brings enough. I mean, it's like Samuro against Arthas, no thanks. It's just like he can't solo lane at all, really. He just does objectives and siege camps well. It's difficult even to split push to some degree because of towers destroying your clones. And the team fight, he has a rough time. I just don't think Samuro is that good at the moment. So he's the one hero that in the melees that I would pretty much never, ever be looking at picking. All right, hopping over to the ranged assassins then. I have Gul'dan as my OP ranged assassin. I just think his wave clear, his damage in the team fight. I just think he's really, really powerful. Horrify is this amazing heroic. I think Gul'dan is really good. He's also pretty tanky for a range damage dealer, which does protect him from a lot of heroes. Like the Kerrigan, even Greymane to a certain extent, who I have moved over to ranged by popular request. I think it makes sense to a certain degree. Zeratul, he's decent enough against those. The tankiness, just the damage, the wave clear. I think he's really, really strong. A really, really strong hero. Tier 1 then, we've got a whole bunch of, I think, pretty good ranged assassins. Vala, Greymane, Lunara, going back to that one, Tracer, Falstad, Li Ming, and Jaina. Cassia, by the way, is going to be in tier 2. I'll come to Cassia in a second and give my thoughts on that. Yeah, I mean, like, Vala just in great range damage, very mobile, all that sort of stuff. Greymane, again, you know, just great wave clear, great poke with cocktail build. Good at focusing single targets down with the Cursed Bullet. I think Greymane is a really, really solid range damage dealer overall. Lunara has really come back into the meta. I think she fits very well in the current meta, again, of like these sort of tankier tanks. Like just the sustained ranged damage that she puts out, the AoE damage. This is the poison burning through. Synergizes well with Arthas, and she's also pretty good against Arthas, for example. But yeah, Lunara, I think she fits in very well at the moment. I think, you know, the Tychus nerfs definitely opened up that Lunara niche of being like this kind of, you know, just the sheer damage output, consistent damage output she puts out. Very good against like the tanky, warrior-y flavored comps that we tend to have at the moment. Tracer, I think Tracer's a great hero. Very, very strong. And definitely like a high skill cap hero. So if you are like this high skill cap player, you can definitely exploit her and have a big impact on your games. Falstad, global, pretty much says it all. Global wave clear and solo lane, like a ranged solo laner. That's what he brings, and that's why he's so good, though his damage will typically be a lot lower than your other damage dealers usually. I think Li Ming is still a great, solid, safe ranged assassin. And then Jaina, again, another great mage. Brings a bit more wave clear, and I think she is pretty damn strong. So I think all those tier 1 ranged assassins are actually, they're great, and you'll typically be happy enough picking them up. Tier 2 I think are also actually quite good. Cassia is really interesting to me. I feel like Cassia is really strong. Obviously she's not good against Arthas, because you're like the super short ranged hero. That's not good. It's like the blinds are situational, but it's, and you know, her E is you jump into melee range. Obviously that's, you know, against an Arthas team you never want to use that. So that's one of her big problems at the moment, is like it's just difficult to fit her into the current meta a little bit, I feel. But I do think that the hero is actually really, really strong. Like again, you can check out the Cassia video I did the other day, you know, charge strikes and then a fend build, and I think it's really, really good. I also have a Hero League video I'll probably try to get up during the week as well. It's pretty salty in it, but I think it also gives you good insight into how Cassia plays. But yeah, I think she's really good. Her win rate's been pretty terrible since she was released, but I think the hero is actually very strong and has a lot of very strong potential. I think maybe the meta doesn't suit her too much at the moment, but she's definitely one to keep an eye on. And she might even receive some buffs again in the next week or two. We'll see, and then she could be very, very dominant indeed. But yeah, I mean, just bear in mind that she's got very short range. So yeah, you need to be careful with where you draft her, that you're not like jumping into these warriors that are gonna lock you down and kill you, basically. I also think talents are a bit of an issue, talent builds and stuff like that. Okay, cool. Next up we got Kelthus, Chromie. I think two great mages, not as flexible or consistent as Li Ming or Jaina, but still good choices on their particular maps that they're good at. I think Tychus is actually very underrated. I think Tychus, he's a decent hero. He's okay. He's certainly pickable. He's obviously he's not the Tychus he was in previous days of being very just completely dominant, always picked. But he is still a good, solid hero. Like, he's still fine. He's still very pickable. And I think he does fit into the Arthas meta. Obviously, the range is a bit of an issue, but he just burns through that tanky HP and can melt him down. I think that is worthwhile. So he's definitely a hero that's still worth considering, no doubt about it. I know he was nerfed, but don't think the nerfs are too severe. It probably looks kind of bad because he's only there. Like, tier 2 looks kind of bad sort of visually in the tier list. I might mix that up a bit in the future. But I think Tychus he's a good solid hero that's underrated, and it can be like, especially if you love Tychus, I'd say take him out again if you've been putting him away because he was nerfed, and give him a go because I think he's quite good. And finally we've got Zul'jin. I'm not a big fan of Zul'jin at the moment. I just feel like there's a lot of answers to kind of basic attack focused heroes that are immobile right now, which is fundamentally what he is. I don't know, like he can be okay, he can be good, but I just don't feel he's as flexible as the others, and I'm not really feeling Zul'jin at the moment, unfortunately. Then we've got Nova, Raynor, and Gall. I think these heroes are significantly weaker than the others, unfortunate as it is to say. Raynor, there is something to be said maybe for Raynor. In fact, I probably in hindsight looking at this now move him maybe up a spot or so. Raynor good against like in the sort of very tanky standoffish, just blast away at each other, not really like diving in too much. He works really well in that kind of meta, so that's worth considering. You know, he's got great range and he's got great single target damage against warriors, like even tanky warriors like Arthas. So yeah, might be worth considering in some niches, but generally speaking, you're going to avoid those heroes. You know, maybe move Raynor up to the bottom of tier 2. We'll see. I probably would do that actually. In fact, let's do that right now. Because I'm looking at it and thinking about it. I actually kind of feel like Raynor fits a bit better in tier 2. So you know, we just stick him up there, cool. And then we'll just move Gal over here. We could just leave Gal over there. Poor Gal. Poor Gal, the poor guy. He has a tough time. Alright, and finally we have the specialists. Nazeebo, I think still the best specialist and one of the best ranged damage dealers in the game. Weak early game, scales just insanely well. Zone control, tons of damage, very tanky, fantastic. What a hero, he's great. In tier 1 then, we got a bunch of cool ones. You know, Hammer, good long range basic attacker too. You can do cool hammer comps as well. So yeah, you can. I did a hammer video fairly recently. You can check that out. Sylvanas, Zul, Lost Vikings, and Probius. So I mean, Sylvanas obviously brings, you know, the great wave clear, great pushing with the pushing objectives. Zul, just great wave clear, great map control, great rotations, all that sort of stuff. Lost Vikings, of course, Garden of Terror. Can't go too far wrong with those. Very, very strong. Cursed Hollow as well, pretty good there. And then we got Probius. I think Probius actually one of the ones that's also... it looked like he got a bunch of very small buffs. And you kind of look at them and go, you know, there's small buffs to Probius, but I don't really see that making a huge difference. Well, you know, I had a video on Probius like yesterday, I think, and he's fantastic. He's great. Like the small buffs really add up and make a big difference. And I think Probius is actually quite strong right now. I think he's actually quite good. He has tons of wave clear, tons of zone control. I think there's definitely a place for Probius, and that he will be very much an underestimated hero. I think that actually helps his strength quite a lot, is people don't realize how strong he can be and how much damage he can do. So yeah, I think Probius is definitely an underrated one at the moment, that you could take advantage of that. I think, you know, some of his strength comes from the fact that people, a lot of people haven't copped on to just how much those buffs meant to his viability. Over in tier 2 then, we've got Azmodan, Abathur, Medivh, and Zagara. I think all good, solid kind of niche heroes. I do quite like Azmodan for the sort of split push pressure and the dunk pressure he brings. Kind of an unexpected hero on a lot of maps. And yeah, you know, he's got a spot. I mean, all the tier 2 specials have a spot. They're all quite weird in terms of what they bring though. I mean, like Abathur comps, of course, fairly. I mean, you have to look up another video for the Abathur comps, but you know, typically with like an Illidan or Greymane, stuff like that, he can be quite good on maps that brings global presence. You know, Towers of Doom, Cursed Hollow, that sort of stuff. Medivh is a funny one. I feel like his place really shifts quite a lot on the tier list depending on the meta. I think someone was commenting on it the other day, but it really depends on the meta and the heroes that are popular at a given time. I feel like he doesn't fit that well at the moment. Like, he just doesn't fit that well into like the Arthas, Lunara type meta that we've got going. So I'd move him down this time in this patch. But yeah, Medivh is he's always an interesting hero. He fits more against like bursty stuff and setting up ambushes and big flashy plays like that. So it really varies quite a lot depending on the team comps Medivh does. So it makes him a very interesting hero, and he's also a very difficult hero to play. But yeah, I think he's okay. You know, he's good against, you know, Li Ming, that sort of stuff, you know, blocking that burst damage. Good against Kerrigan, again, blocking the burst damage, the burst kill pressure, that sort of thing. Then we got Zagara. Again, I think fairly underrated hero. This sort of wonky solo lane pushy hero. Yeah, she's a weird one. Again, I'm not an expert. I haven't been playing much Zagara myself. But yeah, I think, you know, she wins some matchups really well and then can spread that creep everywhere and get a lot of vision control, a lot of pushing pressure. So definitely she's there as a cool option for the solo lane. Once you work out which solo lanes that she matches up well against, and you pick her into those, and then suddenly you've got this range damage dealer in the solo lane, opening up more melee heroes in your rotation, your 4-man, or your other lanes. I think that's an interesting thing that she brings, and she's pretty cool. And we've got Murky and Gazlo. I think they're underpowered at high level play. I just don't think they're that good. I think that Gazlo and I think they're stronger in lower levels of play, but in higher levels of play, I think they're so squishy as these melee heroes. I think they're difficult to fit into a functional team fighting composition. I still feel like the team fighting is a huge part of the meta. So yeah, they have difficulty going through that. So there you go, guys. That is the tier list. Again, we've got the warriors. I mean, Arthas and Ubarak, Sonya, I think, are the ones to really watch out for. And the fall of ETC, kind of the story of this particular patch. Then over in supports, I feel like the supports are fairly balanced. They nerfed a lot of the stronger ones. You know, Lucio, Malf, who are OP, Tassadar, of course. They toned them down a lot. So yeah, I feel like the supports are, you know, there's quite a lot of viability there, though you will be focusing on, I think, the top 4 for the most part. But there is options to go for other heroes as the builds, the team comps kind of bring some variety about. So yeah, supports are in a pretty good, fairly balanced spot for the most part. Melee Assassins, Ragnaros, obviously not as strong as he was before, just been toned down to a much more reasonable position. I think Zeratul is the big one to watch out for, but he's very difficult to play. So it's not too often that you will have to worry about him. But yeah, I mean, if you know you're going up against a good player or a good Zeratul player, definitely one to be pretty terrified of. And then, yeah, I mean, I just think they're all fairly niche. The melee assassins are all fairly niche. So that's always worth considering, especially in the kind of Arthas type meta that we've got at the moment. Ranged assassins, I think a lot of good variety here at the moment. Yeah, like I've been saying recently, I feel like ranged assassins obviously not as strong as they have been before, but they're still good overall. I think Gul'dan stands out to me as being probably the best overall ranged assassin right now. Then you've got a lot of strong options in tier 1. And even in tier 2, you can feel free to bust these heroes out. They're good, solid heroes. And again, just as damage dealers, you are being very counteractive and synergistic in the draft. You know, you're rarely picking heroes in isolation. It's more like, okay, well, which ones are going to work well against their comp? What works well with ours? So, I mean, like, for example, like, just jumping down to the tier 2 ones, like Tychus, okay, they've got this very tanky team. I've got pretty good protection from my team. We'll bust out the Tychus to kind of melt through their tanky, like, melt through their Arthas. Their Arthas thinks he's safe. We're going to melt him down with a minigun. It's going to be great. Or, again, Chromie. It's like, Tomb of the Spider Queen. They've got, you know, a vulnerable solo laner. We're going to use Chromie to just gank that solo laner constantly. They'll lose all these gems. We'll get these kills. We'll be able to turn in from that, and we'll kind of snowball the map from there. That sort of stuff. So, yeah, I think there's good variety there. And, yeah, then for specialists, I think the Zebo is still the OP for sure. I think Probius actually a lot better than people think. And, yeah, then specialists still, for the most part, apart from that, the same sort of spot that they have been for a long time. So guys, thank you for watching. I hope you found it helpful. Give it a thumbs up if you did. There should be over me or around me at the moment buttons you can press to check out another video, check out the Hero League stuff I do, subscribe, support me on Patreon if you want to do that. And yeah, like I said, we'll bring the proper program for the tier list back next time, so it will look better. But thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. I'll see you all next time. Bye bye.